Well, hey there, kids. It's your good buddy, Uncle Ben, and I'm having myself a cup of coffee. And I'm having this cup of coffee because I'm hungover. And I'm hungover because I drink at night. And I drink at night because of the massive amount of Metallica misinformation that's floating around the internet. So on today's video, we're going to go on a quest to put some Metallica myths to rest. Get me some aspirin first, though. If you guys like this video and want to gain access to a ton of downloadable tabs, backing tracks, bonus lessons, and more, consider supporting my channel over on my Patreon page at patreon.com/BenEllerGuitars. Last week I uploaded a ton of backing tracks for a great alternate picking practice routine. The week before that I uploaded like 36 incredible drone tracks to help you out with your scalar practice. There's all kinds of stuff available, even at just a $1 a month level. So be sure to sign up today. Thanks! Gear-wise for this video, I'm using my Suhr Modern Satin. I've got that running into the Peper's Pedals Dirty Tree, which might be the tightest boost I've ever used. And I'm running those into the red channel of my REVV Generator 120. First off, let's talk about the most hotly debated 8 notes in Metallica's history, the super fast riff at the start of Dyers Eve. Is it 2-3-2-3-2-3, or is it just 2? It's just 2. I gotta admit, I was a little bit surprised whenever I found out that like half the internet thought that riff was going like rapidly between B and C like that, because as somebody who's learned a lot of Metallica tunes over the years, they just don't write riffs that go like that. Give me an example of any other time in their entire catalog that they've written a riff at that tempo that features them going back and forth between 2 notes like that. They just don't exist. And I know that somebody's already typing up a furious comment about how they have the official tab book and it shows it going 2-3-2-3-2-3 and stuff, but I hate to break it to you, but those tab books are garbage. The tabs weren't written by James and Kirk. They probably signed off of it just so they could start getting paid and, you know, eating again. Plus there's even an old interview with Kirk in a guitar magazine where he was talking about that exact riff and he shows it on tab as being nothing but straight B. But if you need even more proof, you can go here on YouTube and type in Metallica Dyers Eve guitar only or bass only and find the isolated stems from the original recordings. I happen to have that guitar stem right here in Logic pulled up to the super fast riff. Let's give that a listen. I even made a handy loop of just the really fast picking part so you can hear that on its own. That's just B. I can even use the Varispeed function in Logic to make it more slowlier so you can hear it more better. But of course the high gain scooped guitar tone that they were using on that record can be a little hard to transcribe off of sometime and pinpoint exactly what note is being played. So let's consult the real smoking gun here, which is Jason Newsted's isolated bass track. Yes, they recorded bass on this album. You can definitely tell from that Jason is only playing at the 2nd fret. Also, be sure to listen through that entire bass track so you can hear how absolutely savage Jason's pick attack and stuff on there is. So freaking aggressive. It's awesome. Next up, let's talk about one of the most misunderstood riffs in Metallica history, the odd time signature riff in Fight Fire with Fire, which actually isn't in an odd time signature. You know the one I'm talking about. That riff is just in good old 4/4 time, but the way it transitions into it can be really confusing if you don't know what you're looking for. Way back on Weekend Wank Shop 137 here on my channel, I did an entire breakdown of how to play that riff. But I got a lot of comments from people saying that they wish I would have done a breakdown on how to count that riff because it always throws them off whenever they go into it. And I can see why, because it also used to throw me off for a long time too. The reason most of us think that riff is in some kind of an odd time signature is because of the way that we're perceiving the riff that comes before it. And that's because most all of us are hearing that main riff of the song backwards. Most all of us perceive that riff as starting off with the G power chord on the downbeat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And honestly, that's a really easy mistake to make considering the super high tempo, the really fast snare accents, and especially the way that the verse starts, because it begins on that G power chord, and then James's vocal patterns really accentuate our perception that this is the downbeat. To unto others. It makes it even easier to perceive this as being the start of the riff, but it isn't. And that's what's throwing your perception of where the downbeat on that riff is, which is what's making the next riff feel like it's in an on-time signature. Let me explain. The very first time that we hear that riff in the song, you'll notice that it starts off with the palm muted open low E. That little set of notes is actually the downbeat of this riff. I'm going to slow this down and count it out, and what you're going to notice is that we actually begin beat number 1 with the open chugs, and that all the power chord accents that we've typically perceived as the downbeat are actually falling on the ands. They're the upbeat of the riff. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and. When you hear it like that, it's really easy to hear that that second riff actually comes in on the downbeat of beat number 1. Nothing weird's going on there. Again, I found the original guitar stem floating around right here on YouTube, so I've pulled that into Logic and slowed it down. Let's count it along with one repetition of the entire main riff going into that second riff. That way you can understand it more better. 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Nothing weird about it. When you slow it down like that, it's really easy to hear that way, but I'll tell you, it's taken a long time for me to kind of retrain my brain, especially in those verse sections, to perceive the downbeat where it actually is. Next up, let's cover one of the most prevalent Metallica myths that there is, James Hetfield's all downstroke rhythm playing. Or as it should be known, James Hetfield's 8th note downstroke rhythm playing. We hear people talk all the time about how James just plays with downstrokes, and I've seen this lead to beginners get really frustrated whenever they start trying to play riffs like Eye of the Beholder using downstrokes only. The way that James uses his downstrokes actually has a lot more in common with folksy strumming patterns than you'd think. The most basic subdivision of a beat is the 8th note, which divides the beat into 2 equal parts, the downbeat and the upbeat. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And if a note in a riff is landing on either the downbeat or the upbeat, James is doing that with a downstroke. This goes for pretty much any tempo, from super high speed stuff like Master of Puppets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and, even down to mid-tempo stuff like Seek and Destroy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Again, downstrokes on the 8th notes regardless of tempo. Now, if a note falls in between the cracks, between the down and the upbeats, that's falling on what we call the E and the This is where we're dividing the beat into 16th notes, or 4 per beat. 1, E, and If a note in a riff falls on either one of those, James is going to play it with an upstroke. The intro to Eye of the Beholder is one of the best examples of this. 1, 2, 3, 4. If we think about that riff from a rhythmic perspective, it's going like this. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 and 4 E and 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 and 4 E and. If I chart that out, you'll see that all the downstrokes are falling on the numbered beat, or the and that anything that falls on the E or in between the cracks, in other words, is getting hit with an upstroke. There's a multitude of benefits to playing this way. For one, it puts the downstroke on the most important parts of the beat and really emphasizes the groove there. And maybe even more importantly, just like good strumming technique, it keeps the hand constantly in motion and in the groove. See, if I played that rhythm with just downstrokes, my hand would look very starty, stoppy, and jerky. Same thing would happen if I just used regular alternate picking. But you'll notice whenever I use James's downstroke 8th note approach, it keeps the hand constantly in the groove and in motion. It's like watching a drummer play on hi-hats or something like that. You could have that right hand on mute and still just visually be able to tell where the beat is. I always say that just like how in physics a body in motion tends to stay in motion, in music, a body in rhythm tends to stay in rhythm. And James got the good rhythm. Disposable Heroes off Master of Puppets is also a perfect example of James's 8th note downstroke approach. Be sure to watch Weekend Wankshop 219 for a full breakdown on that one. Yeah, that's just a quick overview of James's downstroke 8th note approach, but I've thought about doing like a full mega deep dive lesson on that here in my channel. So let me know if that's something you guys would be interested in the comments section. Next one here is a quickie, but it is kind of mind-blowing because it turns out that all of us, myself included, have been playing the main riff to Enter Sandman wrong for decades. Because they don't play it like this. They also don't play it like this. Instead, James plays it with this fingering. Big ol' shout out to The Art of Guitar, who is now celebrating his 600,000 subscriber count. He's the one that showed me how to actually play this riff the right way. His channel is fantastic and he's got a ton of great Metallica stuff on there, so be sure to go check him out. Tell him Uncle Ben sent you. So when you play this riff with the fingering that most players use, the first finger is doing double duty. It's playing the G note, and then it has to jump up here to the low E to play the A note. Now that means that whenever we jump up here to the low E string, we're gonna lose this G note. You can hear it just kind of cuts off whenever you go down here to the bottom. Whenever James plays this riff using his first and fourth fingers, it means that he can use his middle finger to play the A note and keep the G note here sustaining. Whenever I watched the Art of Guitar's video on this, it kind of blew my mind and I was like, there's no way that's right. But as soon as I played it with that fingering, it sounded just like the record because that G note wasn't getting snipped off anymore. Anybody that watches my channel knows that I'm a sucker for little details like that, and that's one that eluded me for most of my life as a player. So big old thanks to the Art of Guitar for busting that one open. And lastly, I want to cover one little detail that you need to play the thing that should not be the right way. Now, a little while back on Weekend Wankshop 198 right here on my channel, I gave you guys a full breakdown on the 5 most commonly misplayed riffs in that song. And in the comment section, I got a lot of people saying that this song is actually played in drop D tuning, which is not correct. Now, don't get me wrong, you can play this song in drop D tuning in a pinch, and in the case of some riffs, it actually turns out a little more easier than the real way that it's played. But then other sections of the tune just start to feel really weird and un-Metallica-y if you try playing them in that tuning. And if you're playing the solo note for note accurate, there's some open string whammy bar stuff in there that won't be the right note if you're using drop D tuning. But if you're still skeptical about the tuning, just watch any live video of Metallica playing this song and I guarantee you won't see any one finger power chords. You're gonna see James up front using his typical 1 and 4 power chord shape the entire song through, which indicates a standard type tuning. Now this does get a little bit weird because at some point in an interview, Kirk said that they recorded the song in C sharp standard tuning, a half step lower than D standard, which is weird because there's never once a low C sharp note in the song, and you can definitely tell like at the end of the song when they're just grinding on that low D power chord that it's in the open position and not fretted. One possible explanation for that is that the band actually did record the song in C sharp standard at a lower speed, and then during the mixing and mastering process they sped the tapes up, which brought the tempo and pitch up a half step to D standard. Another possible explanation is that Kirk was talking about the tuning that they played the song in live, because there for a really long time Metallica was tuning everything down a half step lower than it was on the record whenever they performed it live. So there's a lot of live videos of Metallica playing this song where they are playing it in C sharp standard. So yeah, a little bit of a murky answer there, but whether you're playing this song in D standard like the record or C sharp standard like they do live, you're not going to be using a drop tuning. So there you go guys, a handful of Metallica Myths busted. I think I'll celebrate and treat myself to a beer. Or 5. but I'm sure that there's still some that I missed, so be sure to let me know in the comment section below what Metallica misinformation we need to cover next time. Thanks again as always for watching. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel for new content coming at you every single week, and ring the bell for notifications every time I upload a new slice of fried gold. If you like this video and want to help support my channel, sign up for that Patreon page today over at patreon.com/BenEllerGuitars, where even for just $1 a month, you get access to a ton of bonus lessons, backing tracks, downloadable tabs, and more. Thanks as always for watching. Now get away from the computer and go play some guitar. Less clicking, more picking.